is Brighton against Tottenham, 4:30 kickoff on Sunday at the Amex. Brighton were dealt their first loss of the season against Chelsea, um, who really punished the High Line. I think it was a clinical display from Cole Palmer, obviously, but Brighton just did not look like an unbeaten side at all. I think they were so easily bypassed. They were just giving up chances at will, and they were rightfully punished. For Tottenham, they face a midweek trip to Budapest after they dealt with United at Old Trafford. In terms of the injury report, it's quite an interesting one for Brighton, as they've got 8 players listed. The most notable one being Van Hecke, who will miss out, and that likely gives Webster another start, which is just again not ideal. João Pedro is also 50-50, as is Joel Veltman. You've got key players for Brighton who are likely to miss out on this game. For Tottenham, you've got Heung-min Son listed on the injury report alongside Udogie. So again, expected changes for Spurs on the sort of left flank. It will most likely be Werner and Jed Spence to start in their sort of absence. But I am very interested in this game. I think it has the potential to be quite goal laden. It's two attack minded sides, and that's reflected in the goals prices. So over 2.5 is just 1.36. Both teams to score is the same price, 1.36. BTTS and over 2.5 goals, 1.53. So very, very short. Market is expecting sort of action at both ends. And it's worth noting that both sides play a very high line. As I mentioned in the United sort of section, Um, and that I think lends itself to being quite like a duel heavy game, especially in midfield. So with that in mind, my first angle is for Balaba to make 2 fouls, which is priced at 1.73 with Sky. Again, I took this last week. It's shortened a bit, but it's still backable. As a single, or potentially you can double with one of the Spurs players to draw a foul, so that's correlated, that will boost the odds. But I think he draws a perfect matchup against Spurs, who drew the most fouls in the league last season under Ange Postecoglou. You'll find duels against the likes of Madison, Kulusevski, Bentancur in midfield, also potentially Pedro Porro, Dominic Solanke, just players who are good on the ball, strong on the ball, and I think Balaba will struggle in those matchups. He is very aggressive in his press, and he can be slightly clumsy at times. So he made no fouls against Chelsea, but he has landed at least 2 fouls in 3 out of 6 starts. I backed him in the game against Chelsea and in the game before that against Forest. And in that Forest game, he made 2 fouls. He was booked. He had an advantage played for his third foul, and he was subbed up to 60 minutes. So I think it's just a testament to how he plays. Very, very aggressive. And against a side like Spurs, I think it's just a perfect matchup. I'd probably have this a fair price, close to 1.5. So again, just taking the value, which is an offer with Sky. And on a similar sort of note, Kulusevski to be fouled is 1.72 with Paddy. For context, he's 1.36 with Sky, which again I would say is more of a fair price. I just think Paddy Power has been very slow to adjust the fact that he's been playing in a sort of central midfield role as opposed to being out on the wing, and that in turn has led to him seeing a lot more of the ball. He's drawn a foul in 4 out of 5 league games, only failing against Brentford, but that was when Brentford sat very deep. So when Kulusevski was involved on the ball, it was sort of in and around his own box in the final third, which is not an ideal place to draw fouls. Against Brighton, as I say, both sides play a very high line, so I think there'll be a lot of duels in midfield. If Kulusevski can pick up the ball in and around the sort of halfway line, that's an ideal place for him. And given his sort of propensity to carry in a similar vein to Morgan Rogers, he's just such a good matchup for drawing fouls. Um, Brighton are very aggressive in their press through their midfielders, Balaba, as I mentioned, and Rifa. So I just think 1.72 is way too big. That's all for the fouls. The next two are some shots on target bets, and a player who I really like is Dominic Solanke. He doesn't get provided with too many chances for Spurs. I think he's he hasn't had too many shots. I think Brennan Johnson's actually had more shots than him this season. But of the chances he does get, they're of such a high quality nature that again I'm focused on the shots on target prices as opposed to his shot prices. So he's 1.57. Your player's a central striker, and I really like his matchup against this Brighton team, who obviously looked really, really poor against Chelsea. If we look into Solanke's shot stats, he had 3 shots, 3 on target against Leicester, 4 shots, 3 on target against Brentford, 4 shots, 3 on target against Man United. He's also scored in 3 straight games. Should be full of confidence. And as I say, just a large majority of his shots are on target. The only miss for this bet was against Arsenal. He had 2 shots, none on target, but he did draw the much tougher matchup against the likes of Saliba and Gabriel. Brighton are just simply not on that level. If you think he'll be up against Lewis Dunk and Webster, you'd really, really fancy Solanke. Another player who has fantastic data is Brennan Johnson, and you can back him to have a shot on target at 1.83 with Bet365. And this selection has landed in 7 out of 8 appearances for him this season, and he's also scored in his last 4 games straight. If you think about how he played against Man United, he was sort of very aggressive from the offset, obviously scored in the first 2 minutes, then he hit the post, and he also had another good chance. So he had 3 chances for a shot on target, landed it straight away, but um, all of those were notably before the red card. So it wasn't sort of affected by Man United being down to 10 men. I really like his, so from a tactical perspective as well in this game, with Brighton playing a high line and being very aggressive in their press, I think it lends itself to backing the sort of attacking players to have shots on target because Brendan Johnson is a massive transitional threat, probably behind Werner, the biggest for Spurs. And I think because of that, he has the potential to be provided with some very good chances, especially in transition. Um, which again, perfect matchup. I think if it was a sort of more low block side, he'd be sort of thrust out wide, not getting into very good positions. But against Brighton, I think he should at times be the furthest man forward alongside Werner. So I like his shot on target price at 1.83. Doing a bit of odds comparison, this same bet is 1.66 with Paddy, 1.73 with Sky. So again, 365 is top price, which is ideal. I think the matchup's really good. The data is obviously solid. It's landed in 7 out of 8 games, so getting 1.83 for that, I think is quality, just good value, and you sort of have to take that when it becomes available. Um, so that's all the bets for this weekend. I will be doing a bit more of a, I'll be doing a sort of long written thread on this Brighton game just because it is still quite far away. Obviously, it's Sunday afternoon. We're only Thursday now at the time of recording, so still sort of a lot that can change in that time. Same for the Man United Aston Villa game. But for now, these are just sort of some early angles for those that like to sort of take the early lines. But as I say, that's all. Thank you very much for